Hey guys, RJ here, and man oh man does it feel good to be home. I know that some of you this week wanted a action-packed episode of The Expanse. I think what we got instead was a ton of good setup for a bunch of different characters in the show. Let's just dive right into all the things we've recently learned. As always, guys, if you have not seen episode 9, season 2 of The Expanse, please turn this review off, go watch it, come back here, and then we can talk about it. I don't want to ruin a single thing for you in this show. With that being said, let's just kind of talk about the character interactions that we get with Prax so far. Him and Amos have definitely been, I would say, vying for things at times where, he wants to send a message out, Amos says no, and I do love the fact that Prax is like, I deserve to know why I'm basically being held prisoner, and he's right in this effect, and that's why Amos ends up telling him everything that they know, what they're going after, the proto-molecule, and why he's involved now, and why they're looking for this physician or this pediatrician, and I really like the way that he interacted with Amos. He ends up getting him to tell him because he appeals to Amos's logical side, and I really like. I am a little confused though, because at the end of last episode we had Amos kind of acting really erratically, and in this episode not as much. So I don't know what happened in that gap of time between maybe Alex and Amos, because those two in particular, which I'll talk about later, were definitely acting strange. But anyways, get back on point here. Prax is, he's a genuine character. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. This guy genuinely cares about the people that are around him. And I do love the way he wants to send this message to the doctor who got sent out into space, killed by the Belters because she was from Mars. And he wanted to send them a message. And while he wasn't really telling them the whole truth, the whole scene where he's sitting there, I'm getting worked up again, just like thinking about it. This guy's a really good actor. I really enjoy his acting on this show so far. I love the angle in which they're shooting it at too. You see his face up on the screen, but you see the back of his head from the shot. I absolutely love that. He's trying to explain to this family that he's sorry, that she probably wouldn't have been on this, she wouldn't have gotten injured or whatever on this refugee ship if she had not come back to help him and try to save him after the mirror fell. So I really loved that scene. I thought there was a lot of good emotions in that scene, and I thought he carried it out really well. So really enjoy Prax so far. The way that he interacts with the rest of the team too, I thought was really perfect. He has a very analytical approach to everything, right? A step by step. He's a scientist, so this is to be expected. He's a biologist. He knows genetics and stuff. I really like the way that he works in some really good humor too. And he's like, "Are your plans always this vague?" And then Amos just immediately answers like, "Nah, this one's about average." So yeah, I think Prax brings a very genuine character besides Holden, I would say. I think Alex and Amos, they have their own little things, their own little niche to kind of fill within the group. I think Prax would be a great addition to this group because he kind of calls them on their bullshit throughout this episode. And I mean, obviously what we end up getting at the end of this episode was not what the Rosinante crew wanted or probably needed at this point, because I feel like their relationships are still a little bit strained from everything that happened with Miller and the Venus stuff and Eros, but we'll get all to that in a minute. I wish I could talk more about the opening scene and the two characters that we're dealing with, the older woman and the man that are delivering the refugee ship that the Rosinante eventually docks onto. It just didn't interest me that much. I thought the ending added a lot of good emotion for their story, but in general, I just didn't find those two as characters all that interesting. I don't know if she's going to come back at some point to be a retribution type character towards the Rosinante crew, and I feel like she would almost be justified in this because they involved her even though she had nothing to do with this at this point. But the end result is that you have to see that the fact that the proto-molecule could end everything, or just in general, we don't even know what its limitations are. So Holden is pretty much at this point, it seems, willing to take any risk in order to prevent the proto-molecule from getting into the wrong hands and destroying it as much as he possibly can. Is anyone else a little bit worried about Alex, by the way? I just wanted to throw this little nitpick in there. Like, the way he was talking and the way they keep framing him in this episode is that he's not going to come back or maybe he'll die soon. I can't deal with that. Okay, we've already lost one main character in Miller in this season, or lost, but you know what I mean. Like I can't deal with two of the what I would consider mainish characters dropping off in a single season. Please do not kill Alex yet. If you're going to kill someone else, just not him and not yet. I'm not ready for it. So then let's talk about what I would consider the most important scene in this episode. And well, I guess it would be a group of scenes, right? Is the Bobby Mars court hearing, negotiation between Mars and Earth. I really enjoyed this scene, and I like the way that they set it up because one, they have Bobby and all of the Mars people coming down from Mars, and they have to take these medications like bone density and other things to basically adjust themselves to 1G on Earth. I really like that. I like how the guy vomits coming off the spaceship, and I like how they all have to wear sunglasses and they're like barely like fumbling towards the UN complex. And yeah, I really enjoyed that stuff. In general, I thought that they did a good amount of setup at the beginning of this episode. It wasn't terrible filler or anything like that. So I do like the way that they're still keeping those things in. In general, I really like the way they set up the courtroom, right? They show this ridiculous opulence that is Earth. And they're clearly trying to make comparisons between, normal societal standards that we see today, a crazy amount of opulence in certain places. And, you have this person from Mars, like Bobby, who comes into this courtroom that is just paintings on the ceilings, everything's gold, everything's fancy, and she sits down, and Christian ends up saying later in this episode, Mars is a nation of people with one goal. They have one goal in mind, and that is to terraform Mars and turn it from a lifeless rock into a garden. Whereas she then compares that to Earth, where she says, you've probably been told that Earth is a bunch of takers. And she's like, and at some point that is kind of true because a lot of people are on government assistance, but it's because they don't have jobs. It's not because they're lazy. It's just that a ton of jobs disappeared with automation, which, by the way, is going to be something we are going to be facing in a lot closer of the future than I think a lot of people realize. But with the comparison of Earth and Mars out of the way, which like I said, I really enjoyed that. I love how the way Christian kind of compares them to Bobby, and I think something actually resonated within her with that. Because we see beforehand where she's putting on her medal that she didn't feel like wearing. She tried to open up one of the windows with a voice command and she turned away. It was too bright. And then after she gets called back in, which we'll talk about that whole scene in a minute, and then she gets called back in, you can tell that she's pissed about the stuff they bring up with Travis, who they kind of just turn into a scapegoat for this whole thing because he was born on Earth, but they moved to Mars, and they just try to pretty much scapegoat him into this person that was firing upon the Marines. And yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit, and I don't think anyone's really buying it in this courtroom, which I find really weird that it seems like most of them know this is bullshit, but they're going along with it anyway. To avoid war, I do understand we all make sacrifices. So let's talk about the court scene, because Christian is a freaking grade A badass, in my opinion. She multiple times has to be like, you shut the hell up. I'll ask any damn question that I please. Like, we are on the verge of war. I'm going to find out what the hell is actually going on here. And your Bobby Draper is not telling us everything she knows. She calls it like almost immediately. You can see the look in her eyes as soon as they have Bobby come in and give the first recount of the story. And you can tell Christian is like suspicious from like minute one. I absolutely love her character. She buys no one's bullshit. And I just love that in a character. She plays it perfectly. Her attitude for some of these scenes, like, who the hell are you? Like, sit down. Let me ask her the questions. It irked me a little bit that Bobby had this open for him, but she is once again told by Mars, the defense secretary sitting there saying, do what you were told to do. Okay, like, don't fuck us up right here. We've already told them that we've given them this story. We've given them reparations. I think I do understand both sides of this argument, unless Mars is trying to hide what they were actually doing, unless this really is all an Earth play when it comes to the proto-molecule. But I just don't believe that. I believe Mars and Earth both have to be involved at this point. I'm pretty sure that's what Jules Pierre Mao was talking about when he says he has other people that are interested in it. I wouldn't be surprised if they were already using both Mars and Earth for their proto-molecule projects. Then we move into what I would consider the second most important scene. It pretty much rivals the most important scene. I'd say they're almost even for the courtroom scenes, is the stuff happening at Venus. And I absolutely love the give and take between Janice and Dr. Iturbi. Okay, like, you have one on Janice's side where he's very mathematical, very statistical. You can tell that he's very locked down in terms of his kind of imagination on things. And then you have Iturbi, Dr. Iturbi, who clearly is at the other end of the spectrum. He pretty much believes anything is possible. He puts that Drake theory up on like the board or whatever, and he's trying to say like this is the amount of, you know, intelligent life forms that could be out there that could be sending signals over this amount of time. And Janice is having basically none of it, and then he's gonna eat his own words, because in a matter of seconds later, they end up coming down into Venus orbit, and they can see where the Eros crater impact is happening. And you see Iturbi like slide in his comm into his pants, and he explains to, like, I'm guessing a private line to Christian what exactly is happening, because she does not believe that Aaron Wright's gonna give her the pretty much, you know, the actual skinny on what's happening on Venus, because he obviously has stuff to hide, and she knows that at this point. But he puts it in his pocket, and they're talking about the fact that there is there's actual biology down there, life sending out signals that it's in an environment that should be can melt lead. So they don't understand how any of this is possible yet. We don't have enough information yet, but I would just say that our theory that we put out a couple weeks ago on Joe Miller being alive is pretty much confirmed at this point. I wouldn't say 100%, because he could be dead, or he's part of the proto-molecule and something completely different now. But I think it's pretty obvious at this point that our theory is at least half right, that the Eros stuff is not even close to over, and they sent it into a bigger energy source. So I can't touch on this show without hinting at the visuals and audio. I thought they were perfect. Again, the docking and undocking of the Rosinante, the Earth research ship floating through space. I loved all of that. The audio playing for when Prax is giving his speech to send that message, when the older couple on the refugee frigate, the husband dies, and you see Holden turn around, the end music, basically that end scene. I thought that was terrific. In general, they're still nailing the audio and visuals in this show, no question. So anyway, guys, that is pretty much it for me this week. I really enjoy doing these Expanse reviews every single week. I usually have them come out between Wednesday and Friday afternoon, so subscribe to us here on YouTube to stay current on those. Go watch the rest of our videos. We also have that Joe Miller theory video that I hinted at. I'll leave that down in the video description, which down there are also all of our social media links, so follow us there. Like this video if you liked it. Comment down below. I want to know your theories. Book readers, please do not spoil anything or you will be blocked instantly. And until next time, guys, we'll see you soon.